Greetings, fellow humans, and welcome to the Renaissance Yorkshireman podcast. Today I'm going to do a third and final video, certainly for the moment, about lucid dreaming. And what I want to do is talk a little bit about reality testing and a little bit about linking your daytime practice with your dreaming practice. So, have you asked yourself today, am I awake or am I dreaming right now? The chances are you have not asked this question, and if you are not asking this question while you're awake, the chances are you will not be asking yourself this question during the dream state, because the things we habitually do or don't do in our waking lives are very often very similar to the things that we habitually do or don't do in our dreaming life. Before I talk about ways that we can link a daytime and a nighttime practice, I want to talk about this thing which is often termed the critical faculty. So let's imagine a scenario in a dream. Let's imagine a scenario from a dream. You're in a cafe, you look over at a table, you see a woman with 6 arms. Now, in the kind of lowest level of awareness, it kind of vaguely registers that it's slightly odd, and then you get on with whatever you were doing in the dream, talking with whoever it was. When you wake up later, it strikes you, she had 6 arms, and that's impossible, I was dreaming. So you make this realization when you remember it later, when you're awake, but in the dream, your awareness is so low, it barely registers. So let's imagine a slightly higher level of awareness. You look over at the next table, you see the woman with 6 arms, you think, oh, that's odd. But you're only thinking that in the same way that, say, if she were wearing an eye patch, you would think, oh, that's a bit odd. But obviously, some people sometimes do wear eye patches because they've got an eye injury, so it's kind of justifiable. With a slightly higher level of awareness, but still not lucid, you look over at the table, see the woman with 6 arms and think, that's really strange, there must be a freak show in town. So you're kind of moving up in awareness, but you're still justifying it to yourself in the dream state. Now, let's imagine a higher level of awareness. You carry on your train of thought. You look over, you think, oh, there must be a freak show in town, that woman's got 6 arms. But then you make the logical leap that there never was such a woman with 6 arms in a freak show. I must be dreaming. And at that point, you become lucid, and you are now fully aware in your dream. So to become lucid, what we're doing is trying to use things in the dream that are impossible in waking life to bring us to lucidity. One of the easiest ways to do this is to have some kind of daytime practice that relates to your dreaming practice. So I'll give you an example from my life which I used successfully. I first started keeping a dream journal and reading books on lucid dreaming and practicing different techniques around about 2009. I was living in Oman, I was working in a college of higher education, I was teaching Omani students academic English. At that time, I owned a car and I was driving a car every day. Now, as it happens, in Britain I've never owned a car, and when I lived in Thailand I've never owned a car. So when I lived in Oman, it was the only time in my life that for a period of 4 years solidly, I was driving every day. Now, there have been a couple of other periods of my life where I've been driving every day for 2 or 3 months, but not as long as when I lived in Oman. As I mentioned in my previous videos, one of the dream signs that I noted when I kept a dream journal was malfunctioning cars. So I made a practice whereby I was linking my driving in real life with the habit of being in a car in the dream state. So in my case, what I did is when I got in the car, I would do a reality test. So the reality test that I did, first of all, I looked in the mirror to see what was there. Then I looked away, and then I looked back in the mirror to see what was there. Now, often in the dream state, when you look at something and then look away and look again, it changes. Street signs are a classic example. So let's say you look at a street sign and it says, I don't know, Willow Avenue. You look away, you look again, it says Willow Avenue, you are awake because it hasn't changed. Now, my experience in the dream state is if you see a sign and it says Willow Avenue, you look away, you look again, it will always change. It will never say the same thing once you've looked away and looked back to it. So the first thing I did was I used the mirror. Then I would look at my hands. And this is called the modified Castaneda technique because it comes from Carlos Castaneda's Don Juan books. And this is my main reality test then and now. I have on occasion used other things, but I've mostly stuck with this because it works for me. So I look at my hands. If they're not doing anything strange, I conclude that I am awake. But then I ask myself the question, what would it be like if I were dreaming? And if I'm dreaming, when I look at my hands, either I have 6 fingers, or my fingers are moving really fast and look very blurry, or they're all over the place. They're always doing something strange when I look at them in the dream state, but when I look at them when I'm awake, they're not doing something strange. So there's a clear contrast between my waking state and my dream state. It's an easy thing to do because there are your hands at the end of your wrist. They're not going anywhere. You can use them as a reality test. It's nice and simple. And as a general rule, simplicity trumps complexity. What I did was I kept my dream journal. After a certain amount of time, I went through it with a pen. I found out different dream signs, one of which was malfunctioning cars, and then I made a link whereby I was doing a reality test based on my car. Now, I was doing this several times a day because I had to drive to work in the morning, I had to drive back from work in the late afternoon, I was driving in the evening, so I was usually driving at least 3 or 4 times a day. So I was doing this reality test 3 or 4 times a day. So it was simple and easy and convenient for me to do this. And if you're going to set up some kind of reality test which is complicated or difficult to carry out, then the chances are you won't get very far with your lucid dreaming practice. That's an example of a reality test that I used. But there are lots of different ways you can set this up, and I'm not going to go through all those methods. If you want a reference for this, Exploring the World of Lucid Dreaming by Stephen LaBerge, or Lucid Dreaming Plain and Simple by Robert Waggoner and Caroline McCready. And if you stick with lucid dreaming for at least 6 months, I would recommend Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self, also by Robert Waggoner. It is a bloody excellent book, but I wouldn't recommend it until you've been lucid dreaming for at least 6 months and have had some level of success. Thank you for giving me your time today. Peace.